Okay. Hey, sorry about that kind of rough intro there. I hit go live and normally it just works. And I didn't see this time. There was a small red error that said an error occurred. Very helpful. Um, and I didn't realize that. So the countdown ended and I wasn't live and I hit live and you're getting this live. So apologize for the rough beginning here. Welcome to episode 19 of Code Break. I had to check. I started this, and yes, I'm scrolling down right now. My first one was February 6th of this year, and wanted to hit maybe a little bit more, but I'm fine with 19. I've been very happy with this show so far. Like I mentioned last time, I realized that my scheduling has been absolutely a bit kind of cuckoo. Um, and for next year, I definitely plan on making that a little better. I will be out of the country for part of January, but my plan is to have something in January lined up and February and actually try to schedule more than one at a time and try to schedule more than, like one right before I want to do this. So, just some real quick news before we get into the fun part of this. If you follow my blog, then you know that I had some bad news last week. I found out that my job was ending at Adobe, and that sucks. But I am extremely lucky and privileged to have some time to find a new gig. And I have discovered I have a great network out there, and I've gotten a lot of referrals and stuff like that. But I'm going to use every darn chance I can to remind folks that, hey, if you want to hire a professional cat demo DevRel type person, I'm your person. So that out of the way. And again, scheduling hopefully will be a little bit more firmer next year. I want to kind of get into the meat of this. And for today, we're going to be doing a round of questions and answers. And I'm going to be bringing in two people that I'm going to embarrass profusely. And I could do that because they're not on stage now. They can't stop me. These two people have been my friends for 20 years. They have been a support system. They have been there for me in good times and bad times. They have been closer than what I would consider brotherhood. They've been really, really good to me, and I greatly appreciate them. And in our private chat, they get to hear me whine. I'm kind of a whiner, just a tiny bit, and they never complain, at least to me. So, with that, I'm gonna bring on stage Todd Sharp and Scott Stroz. Hey,
Who's
y'all.
the second guy you're talking about? Because I know Scott is your good friend, but
Come on now,
who's the other guy? Hey Ray,
you guys.
how's
You
it
guys
going?
both are awesome.
Thank
Hi.
you. And we're lucky to have a friend such as yourself.
Agreed.
Oh, now it's awkward and emotional, and luckily, men are very good at handling emotion, right? I
I
definitely
got no
respect.
problem with that. I
I was
mean,
tearing up a
I'm
little.
good with that.
Uh,
Yeah, we could tell. We could tell.
Thanks.
Hey Scott, your picture behind you is a little crooked. Can you fix that? It's kind of bugging me.
Which one? There's like
The
9 of them.
crooked one. The crooked one.
I can't see which one's crooked.
We can all see it. Everybody in chat, you should all comment about which picture is crooked to help Scott out. Because
Every one of those pictures was put up with a level, so I doubt that any of them's crooked.
Then it's your
I can
camera.
tell. There you go.
Could be my camera.
So
So,
what's going on? What's the agenda for the lovely discussion today?
so I have some questions. Some of these from me. One of them from a person who wrote in. And by the way, those of you in the audience, I do like questions. This one took me 2 months to get to, so I apologize for that in general. But Uh, I'm gonna start asking questions of these guys here and myself as well. And those of you in the audience, if you want to ask something as well of all of us, then please do so. And what my goal is to go from kind of like serious to like one word, one sentence questions, just to make things a little easier. Not quite 42, Nick, but darn close. There you go. All right. So first question, very, very simple. and I'm gonna go
Are
with
we are
some.
we gonna do we want to do intros here, or are we just gonna
Yes.
hop right into it?
No, no. First question is intro.
Nice.
Well, it's intro and a bit. So tell me who you are and tell me how you got into development, not DevRel. I want to talk about that later, but just into coding, computers, whatever. Scott, you're first. There you go.
I was like, who's going to go first? So, um, while I'm the oldest of the three of us, I actually think I've been doing it probably for a shorter period of time than the two of you, because I actually spent a good portion of my early adulthood working as a paramedic. I worked as a paramedic for 15 years, and at one point, I was the operations manager of the largest EMS company in New Jersey. I had about 400 people underneath me. And when I got to that position, I realized that's not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I actually went to school to be a network engineer. And when I finished school, the president of the EMS company gave me a job to be his web developer, which to this day, I am not sure if he knows that what I went to school with had absolutely nothing to do with building websites. But that's like that was the first job I had as a developer, and I just fell in love with it. You know, I had actually done stuff when I was the operations manager. I wrote some like access apps to help me manage stuff because that's all I had access to. No pun intended. Um, but and it's interesting. And when I first started using Cold Fusion, that's how I discovered Ray Camden. Like I knew it was weird when I first met you in person because I had known so much about you because I followed your blog for so long. So it was kind of weird to like meet somebody even though you know so much, you know a lot about them already.
Todd. And just to keep it simple, from now on, Scott first, Todd, then me.
It's a fascinating origin story, Scott. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you.
My origins go back a little further. I would say I got into development. Well, how did I get into development? Well, the first time I ever wrote any code was when I was about 8 years old, I would say. So we had a Commodore 64, and of course, the other two dinosaurs in the stream here are well aware of this, but for the kids watching at home, there was a lot of games that were on these old computers that were text-based. So you would like type commands, and you'd get a text prompt. You have entered a dark room, and what do you want to do next? And you would say, look around, and it would say, you see a torch, unlit torch sitting on the table, and you would say, light torch, and they would say, with what? So you had to kind of type your way through these games. And my brother and I were playing one of these, and we got to a certain point in the game and couldn't figure out what the heck to do next. So essentially, my brother, I don't know how he figured it out. I think someone at school told him, but essentially he found out that you could actually view the source code of the game on the Commodore by, I don't know if it was every game or if it was just certain games. I don't know if there was like a compilation step. I don't know much about old ancient Commodore technology, but this particular game we could view the source, and we went into the source code and we actually found this part where we were stuck at and learned that the command it was looking for was actually misspelled in the source code. So they didn't have any like, I think I'm frozen here. Am I frozen?
Your video's a little choppy, but your audio has been okay. If you want to cut your video, that's an option, but your audio is okay. Because I said that. Let's give him a second. Oh, okay. We're gonna let him come back in. Well, I will answer while Todd is hopefully hopping back in. Uh, Probably very similar. My mother's employer gave her an Apple IIe that she was supposed to learn on, and for some reason also gave her a bunch of games. And oh, there he is. Let me add him back to stage. Todd,
Lost
I
my.
had just started like a second. If you, how about you carry on?
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about that. I switched to my hotspot, so hopefully it'll be a little more stable here. So where was I at? So we found out that essentially the part where we were stuck at in this game had a misspelled command that it was looking for, and the way we got unstuck was to fix the spelling in that source code. There was no fancy like regex. It was just like literally string compares. Like if command equals walk, and let's say walk was misspelled. So that kind of was my first real introduction to, wow, there's actually code behind these games. And we continued to hack it, and like we tried to create our own version of the game and like change everything. Ended disastrously, of course, because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. But it was like my first introduction to code. Fast forward 20 years or so, and I was working at AT&T. Similar to Scott's position, was in a somewhat tangentially related data analysis role, and they're like, "Hey, you're really good at Excel macros. Do you know how to write websites?" And I'm like, I could probably figure it out. So, similar to Scott, ended up writing Cold Fusion and learning from the Jedi Master, and it's all kind of history from there. So, you know what? You guys need to stop muting. Let's make this more conversational, and like feel free to interrupt me and make fun of me, because it's making me kind of paranoid when you're muted.
Before we get to you, Ray, I want to say something about the Commodore 64. There was a program that they had for the Commodore 64 called Graphics Basic, and it was essentially a way to make graphics by using a language that was similar in syntax to BASIC. And I actually spent most of my senior year in high school writing a program in Graphics Basic that traced out the MTV logo and then randomly changed the color so it looked like, from like one of the old like 80s commercials where, it was like all the colors of the M and the colors of the TV always changed. Um, that was a lot of fun, but like I said, it took me most of my senior year to get all the coordinates and all the other stuff working the right way.
So like Todd, I started very young. My mom's employer had given her an Apple IIe and a bunch of games, and I played the games. And I remember also getting stuck in Bard's Tale. Not stuck. I didn't want to think, and so I had to learn hex and edit my save file to add like a billion experience points. And that and a particular movie, I'm kind of known for being a Star Wars guy, but I saw Tron at a very young, impressionable age, and I like to hope that I wasn't so young that I thought, "Oh, this is real." Like, I hope I knew, it's a movie, it's Hollywood, but it absolutely got me excited about it. Went to college for comp sci, years and years playing on my Apple IIe, uh, entered with comp sci, and I found out that being good at math means nothing at a certain point. Like, I was always, I'm great at math, and then Calc 3 hit me like a brick wall. So switched degrees, went to English,
Calc 3.
and
Shit, Calc 1 hit me like a brick.
Calc 1 I could get. It was just how, yeah, just I have a lot of
I
respect.
didn't even try Calc 1.
My son just told me yesterday morning that he got he just took pre-calc, and he's in 11th grade, and he was really upset because he got his final grade for the semester, and he had a 88, and he's like, "I'm really sorry, Dad. I'll get it up next semester." And I'm like, "Dude, 88 is good. Don't kill yourself."
Seriously.
Absolutely. All right. So next question, a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. I don't want to say one word, but I'll say keep it short. Favorite food?
Pizza.
Oh, jeez. Ramen.
This is kind of cheating because it encompasses a lot of stuff, but sushi. I could hurt myself. of sushi. All right. That actually
I
went
mean,
a lot quicker than I thought. Mhm.
if you're gonna pick a food to kind of gorge yourself on, at least it's a somewhat healthy one.
Sashimi, I would say. All that rice just adds up.
Yeah, but I mean, there's not that much rice. I mean, I've been to Japan 3 times in the past year. The amount of rice the Japanese people eat at every meal, like, boggles my mind. There's, it's just a lot of rice, and but you got the vegetables and the
Yeah.
protein to go along with it. So
All right. Deeper question now. What got you into developer relations? And again, Scott, Todd, me.
I'm gonna say you did. You guys did. No, so um, I used to work for a government contractor, and I was on a project that I was not really a big fan of. I didn't particularly care for a lot of the management on the team. I think the project manager and the program manager kind of led us astray in some places and threw us under the bus a lot. And I had been at that company for I think it was like 11 years at that point. And I talked to the program manager about helping me figure out a plan for me to get promoted. I'm like, I've been here, 10 years. I think I could take the next step. And she kind of put a kibosh on it. And she was like, I don't really think you're ready for it. And I think what you need to do is take some time over the holidays and really think about what it is that you want to do. And I did. And I realized that I wanted to get into developer relations. And that's not something you can do at a government contractor. So it took me probably about a year, maybe a year and a half before I was actually able to land the position I have now. I did a lot of interviews. I talked to a lot of different companies. Every time I got rejected, I learned something that I was able to, you know, um, change either in what I was doing outside or the way I interviewed. And you guys helped a lot with that in terms of helping me figure out what it is I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, and what I wanted to uh what I needed to do to make myself stand out from other uh candidates whenever jobs did show up.
my turn.
Yep.
Okay, I killed a couple programs I had running in the background, so maybe it was a CPU issue that's causing my issue. So hopefully my buffering issues get a little better here. So for me, it was, of course, you had a lot of influence into my decision, Ray. Just seeing kind of your evolution in blogging. Actually, you were the big reason I got into blogging. You know, back in 2007, 2008. And as I learned more about technology and programming and started going to conferences and events and speaking, I kind of realized that this role is like everything I love about life. It's technology, I get to write code, I get to work on projects that aren't driven by customer requests most of the time. It's not, there's no hard deadlines, there's no sprints, there's no customer telling you what you need to write. To an extent, I mean, of course, I would say that my engineering team is an internal customer, and and product teams, of course, have a lot of influence into the direction of my content. But I always loved being on stage, always loved theater, I always loved writing. I majored in journalism in college and love technology, and this job lets me do all of those things and get to travel the world and see amazing places and try new things, meet new people. It's just the best job I could possibly imagine.
That's very cool. Um, I I struggled a long time to get into DevRel. I knew for a long time that I wanted to do it, but it was really hard for me to kind of make that jump. I started blogging in 2003, mainly because I remember my very first program. I remember the first bug. and I remember how I felt when I fixed that bug, and it's what I imagine that crack cocaine is like. Like, I fixed that bug, and I was like, "Oh, great, I'll never have a bug again, I'm done with bugs." Um, but I ever since I stopped computer science because I couldn't hack the math, I've always felt like I just wasn't smart enough. And most of my blogging is this was really hard for me to figure out. I dumped it down to my level. This is my take on how to use it. And I love that I get to be a little bit silly and build impractical things. And I will find the dumbest excuse to test some particular technology and make it simple. And my hope is that my readers can say, okay, Ray's building a dumb cat demo, but this was really easy. I could build serious enterprise cat demos with this instead. So that's what got me interested in this space. I tried for a very long time to get officially into it, and it wasn't until 2013 at Adobe, imagine that, ironic, that I got my first DevRel role.
So I think one of the things I love most about our job doing DevRel is at every position that I've had in since I've been a developer, every job I've had, there's been somebody I work with who seem to take it upon themselves to be like, I'm going to make sure he's better at his job. So, like, there are people that have been huge influences with me that I've worked with day by day that they helped me become a better developer. And I've always tried to be that person for other people. And now I kind of get to do it on a much grander scale. I can reach a much larger audience than the 10 to 15 people that I was working with, as a developer. And I love talking to younger developers at conferences. A lot of the conferences I tend to go to, there's a lot of students there, and talking to them and seeing like the enthusiasm that in them that I have or had back when I was first starting. I wasn't young when I started as a developer, but I remember that that giddiness of learning new things and fixing bugs and stuff like that. And I still get that. It's a little bit more tempered now because I guess I've been doing it so long. I guess I expect I'm going to fix a bug, but I still do kind of get that little bit of a high, when you're trying to figure out what's wrong with something. And being able to share those experiences to help people get through those types of issues themselves a little bit faster is, I think, probably one of my favorite parts of my job.
It's not even just bug fixes. I mean, for me at least, it's like the fact that I can write some code and produce something on a screen or interact or grab some data or analyze some data or modify some data or whatever it is just still gives me, like, when I click save, compile, and run, and something happens that I wanted it to, it's just still the rush that it was the first time that I wrote a query from a database and output some data on a screen. Like, to me, it's just, it's a passion. And I try to tell younger, not even younger, just anybody who's interested in getting into programmer technology, that it's not necessarily a prerequisite that you have a passion for it, but you'll really struggle if you don't have a passion for it, because it's a field that can kind of really burn you out quickly if you don't enjoy what you're doing. The money may be good, the opportunities are great, but if you don't enjoy it, it's not going to be something that you want to do every day. So that's kind of my advice to younger or to people looking to get into programming.
I like that. I like that a lot. All right. Another simple one before we go into a crazy one. And I will definitely allow more than one word because this one's going to be like, really, it depends. But favorite band?
Are we talking current or
This was a test to see like how much you would fight back on the simple question, and you failed. So
Oh, well, no, well, here's the thing. I would say my current favorite, like the band I listen to more right now, is Shinedown. But I think if I was to pick a band, like my favorite band of all time would probably be U2.
YouTube?
No boo in the end, just YouTube.
Oh, okay. Uh, I can't answer this question. Favorite band. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I like hard, heavy rock music, heavy metal,
Mm.
but I don't particularly single out any one performer and focus on them. So, but then again, I also like spa music and orchestral music, and like I have some very differing tastes in music. So I guess it just depends. Plus, I'm old, so sometimes I listen to like talk radio and other old people stuff, and depends on the mood. I mean, I also dig lo-fi big time. So if I'm like writing some code, I'll just throw on some like background type music that kind of keeps my brain moving. So hard question. What about you? What's your favorite band?
So I'm happy you mentioned spa music, because, like, every now and then, especially if I'm really stressed out, that kinda light jazz, as lame as it sounds and as vague as the music is, it can slow me down because, like, my normal favorite, genre is, like, loud pounding trance, and when I'm in a good mood and I'm coding, like, I wear hearing aids now because of that. I can really crank some stuff out, but keep it simple. I broke my own rule. Favorite band, I'll do like Scott and kind of do like all time. I'll say Depeche Mode and The Cure. So that's kind of cheating. It's two, but and also old people music.
So I have to say, like, I struggle with the lo-fi
Oh
stuff
God,
because
here we go.
no, because to me, and
Oh, here we go. You're old.
I am old, and here's why.
Oh
Like, I
God.
have yet to hear anything that had lo-fi music in the background where I don't think this is the background music to an 80s porn movie.
That's not at all what we're talking about. I don't know what
That's
lo-fi channels you're listening to, but I'm talking about like the music that's playing in this coffee shop right now. It's
Yeah.
just like
exactly.
chill. What pornos are you watching, dude?
I'm gonna divert us right now. Just gotta stop right now
Wow.
and go to an easier hard question. Um, what is the hardest problem you think developers are facing today?
Oh,
Ooh. I would probably have to say keeping up with the constant changing in tech stack. Um, it seems like every month almost there's a new framework or a new a new way to do things or a new way to do deployments or it seems to me like it's think it's easier for me now because I have a better understanding of a lot of the underlying stuff. So I can take experience that I've had in other technologies and apply them and pick stuff up easier. But for like new developers coming in and trying to learn everything they need to know, learn about a particular stack, and then by the time they're done, it's like it's obsolete and everybody's moved on to something else. It That can be a bit daunting, I think, and it can be scary. Uh, to see all these different changes and what about this and what about that, and it's like you start to get your wrap your brain around something, and oh look, a new version came out and everything changed. And if you don't have the experience that like we have of the 20 years experience of dealing with the stuff where there was change when we were all working and coding, but I don't think it was as fast and as furious as some of the changes are now.
what was the exact wording of the question again?
What's the hardest problem developers face today that's not paying attention?
I was paying attention. I just wanted the exact wording of the question.
I had to. I'm sorry.
Staying relevant, I guess, and that's somewhat what Scott was saying, or staying advancing from junior to senior, I guess, is a challenge. It's going to be even worse because all of these AI code assisting tools and LLMs that are helping people out and producing code, they're going to get people 80% of the way to a solution and maybe even 100% of the way in some cases. But without experience and without struggling to solve some of those problems, that 80 to 100% gap that's missing is going to be even harder to solve for some people. And it's not just finishing the code, it's also troubleshooting. Without domain knowledge, without expertise, it's like I could ask, going back to your calculus, and maybe this is a bad example, but I'll use it anyways. I could ask an LLM to solve a calculus question for me that's really difficult. I don't know shit about calculus, so whether it's lying to me or not, if it is convincing enough, to me, sure, that answer sounds good to me. It makes sense the way you explained it, but is it right? I don't know. So that's going to be the hardest thing, I think, in the next 10, 20 years is understanding what is being produced and how to fine tune it and how to even ask the right questions. Because, some people who've been around for a little longer know what questions to ask and know how to prompt it to get where they need to go. But without experience, I think it's going to be tricky.
That's part of why I'm not terribly. I was going to say not too worried about my job, but not too worried about my job as a whole.
Your
uh,
future in
my
the
future,
industry.
Career.
yeah, because I am seeing some great Gen AI code production, but it's great because I know it's great and I know where
Right.
it's wrong, and I can still appreciate. Oh, you wrote most of this code and that part's a little off. I could fix it. Great. If you don't know that, then you're screwed. And I've worked. I was about to say I dealt with people. That's not very friendly. I've worked with people who have been able to put code out there and they couldn't debug at all. Like, I'm talking even just simple, like, can you add, like, a log message just to see what it's saying? That whole concept of, it's not working, how do I break it down? How do I test and see where the failure is and just iterate from that? And, like, I've been doing console.log for 20 years, and yes, I should use a proper step debugger. I'm a hell of a lot faster dropping in a console log and just seeing something in Node.js, some process.exit to kill it right there so I could see it. Um, Not being able to do even just that is kinda scary. My general answer to the question, it's a lot like what Scott said, really, is just keeping up. And typically, what I recommend for people, especially on the web platform, that there are like 5 or 6, 7, 8, 10 newsletters that like once a week tells you here's all the new crap. And what I go through it, if half of them are I have a new library that does cowbell. I don't care. Like, oh great, I remember there's a solution for cowbell. I move on. I don't care. Every now and then, it's about a new JavaScript spec, and that's something I could use every day, and I'll give that a higher priority. But for like 90% of the stuff coming in, I just file it away for later. Like, okay, there's a solution to do so and so. I don't have to worry about that now. I'll come back to it later.
How come Rinaldi's not in here? We should have invited him to the party.
I should have. Sorry, Brian. I know you could hear this. Yeah, see. I knew he was busy. That's why. Um, Another easy question, and I will take any form of an answer for this. Favorite drink?
Single malt whiskey. Unpeated.
I have to go with beer.
You no. I'm gonna say no. Wrong. Give me at least one, like even a type of beer.
He wants a brand name or a lager or a
I'm a fan of amber
cheap
lagers.
cheap beer, I think is the answer for Scott.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I my you know, there's a time when that was true, but I think my my taste for beer has evolved, and I am more.
Look at that.
See, I used to
Habiki
drink beer to
harmony
get
with a
drunk. Now
single
I drink
small
beer because
rock.
I enjoy it.
Mm,
Rinaldi knows what's up. That is a good choice right there.
I will say I've been a fancy beer drinker for a long, long time, and I can still appreciate it, but I'm also getting a little bit tired of that, especially the way it bloats you up. Started drinking wine 5 or so years ago, and a good strong Cabernet Sauvignon. I can't remember the brand. There's one that's done in whiskey barrels, and it's like a punch in the face for a wine, and I freaking love it. It's really, really great. Um, yeah, cool. All right. This was the reader submitted question that from Aisha, and I haven't seen that person in chat, but Aisha, if you are here, I apologize for taking 2 months to answer your question. But they say, I've been learning to code off and on for the past 3 years and have been wondering what kinds of projects I should be developing for my portfolio to land my first job as a full stack developer.
I would say whatever drives their passion. So I have an app that I've been working on for over a decade that I use to kind of keep myself writing, like, code that matters to something. I manage a golf league, and
Mm,
I wrote a web application that helps me do that. And even though I've been using the app now for, actually, I think we just finished the 14th season of data that I track using the web app, and I've tacked stuff on, and I've threatened to rewrite it, and I'm in the process of another. I'm motivated to rewrite it into something to make it a little bit easier. But I've tacked on so many things, and there's so many things that if I had thought about it when I wrote it, I would do differently. So I wouldn't have to like tack the stuff on, and that goes for not only the code but for the database structure as well. So, and what's weird is the fact that thinking about that, like, yeah, well, what could you possibly need to use with the tracking a golf league? As Todd probably remembers, I spent hours several years ago working on an algorithm to be able to allow me to easily schedule matches. So, now I can just schedule them with a click of a button. Whereas before it used to be I'd have to go to a site, enter the teams, have it generate the schedule, and then me input the schedule manually into the web interface or the database. And like that was a fun problem to solve, even though it took me a while to get everything, the way that I was happy with. But that's not something I would have thought, hey, learning how to do some type of an algorithm like that could pay off. That is something I could wind up using again down the road. At least maybe not the exact way to do it, but like, hey, I kind of solved a problem like that before. And you guys are probably the same as me. Is like, we may be presented with stuff where it's not like, hey, I've done that exact thing before, but it's like, no, but I've done something similar enough to where I could take, what I've done and what I've learned and apply it to the new thing. And I think sometimes if you have a passion like that, for me, it's this particular app, and I actually love working on it. I love tinkering with it and adding new features and seeing how many of the rednecks that I play golf with, actually notice that these new features
Dude,
um, happen.
are you trying to offend everybody watching today?
No, it's just it honestly, everybody that I was talking about just then would refer to themselves as rednecks. They proudly call themselves rednecks. So I did not mean that. I did not mean that to imply that anybody watching or anything. But that's just the guys I play golf with in the golf league. I would say easily 75% of them would self-identify as a redneck. Like that's the word they would use.
Nice.
What do you think, Todd?
I mean, it's an easy answer to me, and it's the same answer. I mean, it's what projects do you like to work on? What motivates you? What are you passionate about? I'll take it a step further though, and I will say that I stand very heavily on the fact that Arduinos and Raspberry Pis are a great way to learn if you're kind of a hardware inclined type person, because and not even, you don't even have to be hardware inclined, you don't even have to know how to solder, but taking one of these little microcontrollers, hooking up a temperature sensor or an LED, and making it flash if the temperature drops below 70 degrees in your house, or things like that, I think are really really good ways to learn coding. And yes, if you're using Arduino and you're using the kind of the standard Arduino programming language, it is not, it's based on C++, so it's a little more complicated than, for at least for a beginner level, I would say. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with learning that as your first language, or learning it as your second or third language, but it is a little trickier sometimes than other languages. But the things that you'll be doing is so basic, so low level, that you're not going to get into like pointers and all the nasty stuff that you can get into in memory allocation. You might kind of hit some memory issues because the boards are so small and have smaller memory footprints. But for the most part, it's really easy to get started. Most of the libraries that are out there for like temperature sensors come with literal examples that that are available in the IDE itself. So you could literally install a library for the DHT22. Yeah, Eric, I'm getting to that. The DHT22 temperature sensor. You install the library, and you go into your IDE, you go File, Examples, and there's a DHT22 samples. Like, there's literally built into the context menu. You can pull them up, you can run them, and see what's going on. And as Eric said, MicroPython is great for some microcontrollers. If you're a Python user, there's another one called CircuitPython, which is very similar to MicroPython. But it's a great way because, like, you get that immediate feedback. You get the fun tinkering kind of aspect. You can build a robot. There's robot kits out there. It's just a great way. I don't know necessarily that that's a good way to build up a profile per se, like a GitHub profile, but it's a good way to learn and kind of keep yourself motivated and keep yourself learning. The GitHub profile, I will say, I don't know if you mentioned that, but that is a great kind of resume, so to speak, or portfolio. So another good idea is find a library or a framework or something that you're using quite frequently, and just start contributing to it. Ask if there's open requests, feature requests that people have submitted, and just become a contributor to some of these open source libraries, or open source your own library, and just build up that GitHub profile, and keep writing code. That's it.
I feel like both of you kind of straddled between doing something for a job along with learning, and I kind of look at it the same way, same kind of idea. Like, yes, I'm gonna do this to learn, and hopefully, it will also help me land a job. My thing has been always to build something that already exists. And I know, like, in the beginning of comp sci, you're told, don't repeat yourself, use a library, blah, blah, blah. But if you are trying to learn a new language and you don't know where to start, you think, oh, let me think of this new idea. You waste so much time. For me, I've always built a blog because I know how a blog works, and I'm not trying to replace WordPress and all that. I'm literally like, I need to persist some records in a database, and on a homepage, hit 10 items. So I got to figure out how to limit my results at. I got to figure out how to sort them. I got to figure out how to show it.
Yeah.
I then have to figure out a link, and that link loads one particular database record. So I've done that in multiple languages and multiple frameworks. For a while, I had something similar in the mobile space when I was big in there as well, and I didn't care that I'd already built it. Like, this is practice at writing code where I don't have to think about features. It's already done.
Yeah, you're not thinking about architecture. You know that there are basic building blocks to that application. You know there's blogs, and there's comments that are associated to blogs, and there's users. You know the architecture. You're not worried about the implementation. You're not worried about the architecture. You're worried about the implementation. That's a great idea. Another thing that I've done similarly is like take existing projects. I did this when I was at Oracle a few years ago. There was a project that somebody had written in Python Flask. Flask is the framework, and I hadn't been using Python a lot, but I wanted to basically learn more about the Micronaut framework in Java, so I rewrote that application. I literally opened it up and went through, tried to figure out what it was doing, and I rewrote that in Micronaut. So I didn't have to worry about what I was building. I just was recreating it. I didn't have to think about solving the problems of the domain. I just needed to learn how to write that code in a new framework.
I think another thing I would tell somebody is don't pigeonhole yourself.
Mm.
We've all worked with people who identify themselves as blank developer, and where the blank would be a language. Um, I tell people I'm a developer because at this point I've used, a variety of languages. I'm proficient in a lot of them. And, to say I'm a Java developer, you know, you might be limiting yourself to other opportunities or learning and stuff like that. And going back to what Todd said about GitHub, I tell young people all the time, put code out on GitHub. If you have like a nifty little script or some, help solve a problem, put it out on GitHub. But remember that the internet can be a cruel place and that people might get you might
Who
get
cares?
slammed from that. But I try and tell them that you know, people might point out a better way to do it. They may do it rudely, but if they do it in a way, or if you learn something about what you did, or why, or how what you did might not be the best way to do it, then you're learning something. And I always tell people, I said, even if you're not sure if the code's good, put it out on GitHub, because if you keep putting code out on GitHub and your code gets better, then any company or prospective employer that's going to look at your GitHub repo, if you're looking for a job, what they're going to see is growth. They don't want to see that every line of code that you've ever written is absolutely perfect. They want to see that you're learning and you're growing and you're becoming a better developer.
Yeah. Yeah, I've I've not done a lot of hiring. I've been involved in hiring, but I'm so much far more interested in how you solve problems than how you write algorithms and stuff like that. Now that I'm in the looking for a job role again, I am probably just going to say no. If I get given a code test, I'm just going to say no. Like, that does not represent what I'm going to do or what I bring to your organization. How I write a Sudoku solver type thing. All right, another easy question. Favorite movie?
Dead Poet Society.
You're supposed to think about it.
I
He
didn't
knows.
have to.
He knows his answer.
Ray, you go, because can't think.
I know mine instantly as well, and it's not what people think. It's Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise, Cameron Diaz, etc.
Really?
I don't know
Mostly
if I've ever
because
seen that.
I watched it not really knowing. I like Tom Cruise. I watch him in pretty much anything, not knowing what the movie was about, and just kind of seeing where it went and just being surprised. And great soundtrack as well.
Brian Rinaldi is shook.
Shook, as the kids say.
Rachel. Can I pick a series?
I could have said something like very very controversial. I didn't think that would be it.
Can I pick a series?
Yeah.
Okay, probably the Bourne series, I would say then. 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll throw 4 in there because I actually enjoyed part 4 with Jeremy Renner. I know a lot of people give it a lot of crap, but I think it was a good divergence from the original. I wish they would have brought them back together at some point and kind of told a story with both of them. Part 5 doesn't exist in my mind. It was just so bad. But yeah, 1, 2, and 3, and 4 gets an honorable mention. I just rewatched one of them on a plane recently. I have a hard drive in my backpack here that Brian says I loved 1 through 3, didn't like 4. But yeah, I have a hard drive with some old movies on it, and I was bored on a plane, so I plugged it in and found. I can't remember which one I watched. Might have been the first one.
I like Renner as well. I like him as Hawkeye. I know I've seen him in more than that, and he just seems kind of chill.
Yeah, he seems like yeah, that's a good way to put it. He's a very kind of laid back kind of guy.
So we're down to about, let's say, 8 minutes. I don't have to end at the hour, but I'd like to end at the hour. So we're going to end in a real simple question. And I'll let you answer. I'll give you two, and you could pick which one you want to answer. First one, Gen AI. What's your take on Gen AI? Or tabs versus spaces?
Oof. So I'm going to take the second question because I used to be firmly in the spaces camp. And I had a conversation with somebody at a conference one day, and they explained why I was wrong. And it all has to do with accessibility. And basically, they explained that, if you have difficulty reading code and you need to have more space in order to be able to read it better. But if it's spaced out more, that's harder to read. So I need it spaced closer together. And if you use spaces, you really can't do that. But if you use tabs, we can each set our individual editors to say each tab is X number of spaces, and the code actually is the way that makes it easier for us to read. And literally, after that conversation, the next time I was at my computer, I set my IDE to use tabs, and then the number of spaces that I wanted each tab to be.
Did anybody ever want to punch Python when it gives you an error about using tabs versus spaces? Can you punch a language like that? Is it possible? Does it really matter that I use the tab and somebody else used? As long as they're lined up the same, why does it matter?
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Can I have a third question?
Sure. Oh, you want one? No, I'll take your answer. That's fine.
I mean, we have 6 minutes. Get into the whole nuts and bolts of Gen AI. I think my problem with Gen AI is that we have trained these large language models that we're using today, and we're continuing to train them on the previous X years of human advancement, which is great, which is impressive, and we've gotten a lot of great results from them. My worry is that what happens in 10 years when we've relied on these for so long to help us out and to live our lives and to do our daily tasks, are we generating net new knowledge? Or does this become a snake that's eating its own tail, if that makes sense, right? What are we training models on in 10 years? On what they've been producing for 10 years? So you're kind of creating this feedback loop with these models that doesn't seem sustainable to me. So that's my concern. Thank you, Rachel.
I'll do the tabs versus spaces first, because when you mentioned things lined up. I mentioned earlier, and you've both heard this story before in the past. I apologize, but um, my very first computer program, again, I rock solid memory of it going wrong, me trying for hours, me fixing it, and me feeling like king of the world. It was basic, and basic is all very line driven with line numbers. And the first program was 10 space print space hello 20 print
Go
world.
to 10.
Well, I wasn't that advanced yet. I had typed that in and it failed, and I'm looking at the code sample in the book, and I'm looking at my screen, and I was just stuck. And the reason it failed is because I had made the code match the book, right? So I typed in 10 print hello, and then I needed 20 on the next line, right? So I hit the space bar, so the cursor went all the way around to the next line, typed my stuff in. About a year ago, I found a PDF of the Applesoft manual, the same one I had, and I'm looking at that freaking code sample. And sorry for yelling, after the code sample, it said, please make sure to hit enter after every line. And 20 years of DevRel experience, I was like, you should have put that in front. Um, so it's a long-winded way of saying tabs for me as well.
No, that's a great point, though. If I'm writing a blog post and I have something like that, I will go back and I will add it before, because there's nothing worse than maybe copy pasting or reading some sample code and then going to your editor, typing it, trying to run it, and then reading the next paragraph that says, "Oh, you should also make sure to do this before you do
Right.
that." So I will try to move that above the example.
Well, I'm going to skip talking about Gen AI because I actually want to talk about it on the stream next year, which is forever away. So I don't have to worry about it now. In fact, and this right here, this was my last time on screen this year. So I'm officially taking the brain out of the skull and just putting it
Putting it in
aside.
that jellyfish thing behind you.
Yeah,
Yes,
seriously.
let it lubricate and warm up and all that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. I really, really appreciate it. And I know Brian's listening. Thank you, Brian, for giving me a place to do this. Certified Fresh Events has been a great home for me, and I really appreciate it. Any last words, y'all?
Certified fantastic events would be my alternative interpretation of that. No, thanks for having me. Thanks for being my friend. I can count on both of you anytime I need anything, and that means a lot to me. And Brian, I know we don't talk as much, but I appreciate you very much too. And here's to an amazing 2025.
Same. Thanks for having me, Ray. And you guys are better than family to me, and I know that whatever I need, I can ask, and you guys would be like, okay.
Well, on that, y'all have a safe holiday, safe New Year's. Love each other, and I will see you in 2025. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Adios.
And